Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and attending this masterclass. I just want to introduce the Emmy-winning producer, Augie Max Vargas.
Thank you. All right. Thank you guys so much. I was talking to Wendy before I got here, and she was worried nobody would be here. But look at that. All you guys are here. So thank you for joining. I'm an Emmy-winning producer, but, it all started, I went to, let me get my mic. I went to Gary High School in Pomona, and ended up going to Mount San Antonio College. And so I was just, like most of you here, just a little brown kid trying to make it in the industry. And luckily for me, I got to live in the greatest country in the world. No matter what goes on with stuff, this is still the greatest country in the world. And thanks to my parents, who came in from the Philippines, they gave me that opportunity because if you've ever been to your original country, you might not realize how limited the opportunities are. And here, so many opportunities. And through going to Mount San Antonio College and taking production courses, I've been able to work on the biggest shows in the world, from the Super Bowl to the Oscars to the Grammys, Emmys, Victoria's Secret fashion show, you name it, Kids' Choice Awards. I've been to the White House and shook hands with President Obama. I've had a really cool career. I've been doing this now 25 years. And it all started from going to community college and starting the process of discovering what I liked and what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to get in entertainment, but I needed to kind of figure things out. So luckily for me, through my journey, I did get to earn an Emmy, which is in the end the highest honor you could get in television production. There's different levels to it. I got a primetime Emmy for, strangely enough, working on the Oscars. So I won at an award show for an award show, which is funny, but it's something that I've carried with me. And I've gotten 5 nominations total, which means I've lost 4 times, which is fine too, because I won one, which is fine. But it's given me a great feeling of knowing that I've accomplished a lot, coming from a place like Pomona, which, if anybody from Pomona out here, or okay, so it's not the place you would think people would be able to go out and win an Emmy, and luckily for me, I did that and have been able to succeed at a higher level. But now what I like to do, which is what I'm doing now, is talk to students. A few years back, I kind of discovered people were asking me to talk to their nieces, nephews, a client's kid who wanted to get into entertainment. And they said, hey, I know a guy, and can you talk to them? And so I would talk to students. This is now well over 10 plus years ago. And I started talking to people, like just an hour-long talk where I would ask them kind of what they're trying to do. I'd tell them my story, and it ended up turning into something that was very rewarding for me, because I knew I was starting to help people. And it's great to be able to win awards. It's great to be able to work on glamorous shows and wear a tuxedo. But in the end, it's like, what legacy are you going to leave? So this is what I'm trying to do now as a side hustle, which we'll talk about a little bit later, because I'm starting another job tomorrow, and I'm going to be working on that. And so I try to get these in when I can. So I'm happy to be able to be here and chat with you guys, and we'll talk. We'll do Q&A afterwards, and I'll do some one-on-ones and meet and greet with you guys. So. So I want to talk to you guys about something that I have termed the lit path. And I know lit is not probably the best word sometimes, but what it means is to learn. So you're going to learn skills, which is what you're doing now in school. You're going to interact, which is communications, right? It's mass communications. You are going to talk with people. You are going to just constantly network and meet more people in order to move forward in your career. And then you're going to think, and this all sounds very vague and generic, but it breaks down to, like in Think's case, is you're going to look at bigger picture sometimes. You're going to have a proper mindset going into things. And I'll explain as we go forward more, but learn, interact, think. every step of the way, from when you break in till you're trying to stay in, till you're leveling up to win. You're going to be doing all three of these things constantly. It's just going to be different levels of it. So when we, just to kind of like lay the groundwork for my origin story, like I said, I kind of came from out here, but before that, I was raised in the Philippines. My parents, even though I was born here in the States, they kind of sent me back to the Philippines to live for a little bit, and I lived there for the first couple of years. Luckily for me, while I lived there, I had a really big family. My dad came from a family of 10 brothers and 1 sister, and my mom came up from a family of similar, about 9 siblings. So everybody had kids. I had lots of cousins, and I don't know if you know any Filipinos, but it's a very joyous culture, and for the most part, I was exposed to that love. When I moved back out to the States, I ended up landing in Burbank, California, which is down the way, about an hour. And luckily for me, in Burbank, California, if you've ever been there, this is where a lot of the studios are. This is where Disney is, Warner Brothers, lots of different Universal Studios is just over the hill. So I was exposed to a lot of Hollywood. There was productions that were happening at the mall where I used to go as a kid, and I would see like the stars sitting in their chairs, and it allowed me to be like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is something that happens. It's not just something that I'm seeing on TV, and I'm close to it. And that helps break a certain level of barrier. You guys aren't that far away. You guys can go down to those places, and there are things that shoot down outside of Los Angeles as well. But the good thing is you're not like in Midwest, where a lot of this stuff isn't happening. If you guys want to go to a TV taping like Jimmy Kimmel or an award show, and you could be a seat filler, you have that opportunity because you're not that far away from it. So you're not, even though you're not in Burbank, you're still not that far away to be exposed to that world. And through that, I found my passion. I found what I love to do, which is television production, content creation, whatever you want to call it now. In the end, it's just putting things together to tell a story. And in filmmaking, it's still the same thing. It's just film or digital. They just do it in an hour to 3 hours. Award shows, sometimes it's 3 hours. Long form television like Shogun or any of these popular shows, you're breaking it into, sometimes 13 hours. In the end, all it is you're creating something from scratch, whether it be writing and working your way up. So I just discovered that. I was doing a lot of stuff with my brother where I would have a video camera and we would do our own little home movies. And so I just realized I liked it. It was just something that was really fun about it. And I think when you, luckily, a lot of you I know have picked your majors, as you are experiencing these majors and you start to realize, you're going to start to realize, what you may not like, what you may like. So just kind of pay attention to it. What brings you joy? What's the thing that makes you smile when you're doing it? Is it directing? Is it interviewing people? Is it doing a sports game? Whatever it may be, just kind of pay attention in your mind. This is the think part of it, right? Just like be present and realize, oh, this is something that I can do the rest of my life because I love it. Because like for me, I love my job. I don't go to work. Like even though I have a job, I don't go to work. I go and I have fun. I do cool stuff and work with, top level talent. And it's just having fun, and they pay me. So it's like, if you could find what that is exactly and get paid for it, you'll live the rest of your life happy. So find your passion. So back a little bit of my background, I was not a very good student. I never did my homework, so I would end up going to, I don't know if you ever watched The Simpsons, but when Bart Simpson's writing on the wall, it's because he's getting punished. And my teachers used to do that to me where I didn't turn in my homework. So they're like, okay, you don't get to go to recess. You have to go sit over there and write dictionary pages, as if that's going to, make me a better person. But I had to do that. I just hated homework. It just never really resonated with me. And maybe I had some sort of learning issue, whatever the case, it never resonated with me. But with that said, I always had a great attitude. And I think that did come from growing up in the Philippines, having this kind of loving family. And the attitude part of it really helps, because if you can carry that with you, if you carry a positive attitude and energy with you, you'll go so far. You don't even have to be that good at stuff. And I've met people like this who their skills are not really that high, but because they come in with a smile, because they interact and have fun with people, they're able to continue working. And they know it's just one of those things where if you have all the skill sets, great, you'll go higher and higher. But if you have a great attitude, that will take you a very long direction. So that was something I had growing up, and that was great. I learned a lot of skills going into school. Like in my family, I was the person who always set the VCR, or nowadays DVD player, or Roku, whatever it is. I was very good with like electronics, and from that point, I started learning more and more things, whether it be computers, I used to work at a computer shop, and I used to build computers from scratch, and learn software and installing software and things of that nature. You have to keep learning and learning. Like I said, the first part, learn, interact, think. Learn as many skills as you can. On this level, when you're just starting out, it's copy machines. It's little simple things like laptops and software, because if you're trying to get your foot in the door, you need to know something like Microsoft Excel. You need to know something like PowerPoint, Word, whatever it is. Like, you have to have those, because if I'm bringing you in as a production assistant, entry level, I'm going to expect you to be able to create a spreadsheet. I'm going to expect you to be able to create signage to put on walls with talent's name on it. Just really simple things, or you would think they're simple, but if you don't know how to do those things, it's not going to be that simple for you. So I was able to start learning that stuff. I learned nonlinear editing. So I was in school and college in around 2000, actually late 90s. And nonlinear editing, which is like Adobe Premiere, Avid, which is the standard for video editing, was just coming out. So I was learning this stuff well in advance of other people, kind of like at the same time. And it was a great skill to have. I still use that skill on a very regular basis. Even though I'm a producer, I know how to edit, which is a great skill to have when you're storytelling. And then with internships, okay? So the best way to get in the business is through an internship. While you're in college, you go, you find a place that'll take you, and you work there for free. Or sometimes they pay now, and you go and you just get your foot in the door. And even though you might do something here on campus, it's a different world out there. You have to get out into the real world and experience how production is in those spaces, or journalism, whatever be the case. You have to go, because it's intense. It's a different level. There's an expectation that you need to kind of live up to when you get to that space. And so try to find an internship and get your foot in the door, whether it be through the school, whether it be through connections. I got my internship from one of my teachers. She was a teacher for a couple different things, voiceover and a couple different things at the school, radio, I believe, as well. And she had a husband who was a producer. He worked on the Oscars. He worked on a lot of the big award shows. And through that relationship, outside of the traditional internships through the school, through that relationship, she introduced me to her husband. And she wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the fact that I showed up to class. I came, I paid attention, I participated, I interacted, and I made it so that in her mind, she was like, I can vouch for this kid. I could send this kid to my husband and not worry about him embarrassing me or himself. And you have to realize that's a huge, huge thing. If you get out there and somebody's vouched for you and you do not live up to the expectations, now that person's name is sullied. That person can now, they might not ask that person for a recommendation anymore because you showed up and weren't the person that they expected. So the other thing I did in addition to internships, I just created opportunities for myself. I was a big pro wrestling fan, still kind of am. And I found a local independent wrestling promotion in San Bernardino called the Empire Wrestling Federation. And I went to a show and I watched the show. I was so excited. And I saw they didn't have cameras. And I was in college at the time, so I had access to cameras. And I went up to the owner and I said, hey, can I come shoot your shows? He said, yeah, see, you don't have any camera guys here. I'd love to just, it'll be my internship part of the school. They're like, yeah, come on down. do it. So I grabbed a couple friends from school who wanted to do what I was doing, enough so that we can have camera operators, technical director, all that stuff. And I went and shot these wrestling shows, and it gave me that experience again. Even though it was low level, I created that opportunity. So for you, whether it be starting a vlog or blog, whatever it is from a journalism standpoint, starting an indie film project, just do stuff. Create the opportunities for yourself, because sometimes they don't come as easy as the situation I had where my teacher hooked me up. So intern when you can, create opportunities when you can't, but either way, get experience, because you cannot merge onto the freeway that is Hollywood and journalism unless you actually like start up at a speed that is going to get you in there safely. Because if you get in there and then you fail, then you're not going to be able to recover. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to set a bad precedent, you're going to have a bad reputation, and it's hard to recover from having a bad reputation. So the communication parts of things, building a network, okay? You have to talk to people, you have to ask people about things and learn about things. I had a friend when I was building computers at a computer shop. The owner was a friend of a camera guy who worked on Good Day LA, and he introduced me to him, and I got to talk to him and just kind of learn about the atmosphere on set. And he would tell me stuff and kind of tell me like behind the scenes things about some of the talent I knew about, and it was really cool. It was one of those things where I got to kind of talk to somebody about it, and you know, when you talk to somebody about the career you're actually going to get into, it helps, because you might not realize like what you're getting yourself into, you know. So you have to talk to people, make connections. Like I said, my teacher, that was a connection. Me going in there and showing up and being positive and having a good relationship with her and not causing problems and being a class clown, that sort of thing. That was a relationship that I built with her, and I'm still friends with her and her husband and their kid. I'm mentoring their son who they've asked me to mentor. So it's one of those things where you just have to connect with as many people. You likely know somebody right now who knows somebody in the industry. You know, you just have to talk to people and find that out. Do the legwork, ask around, because the people that can help you, whether it just be giving you a little bit of mentorship, a little bit of advice, like I told you I do with other students, that goes a long way. They might not get you your foot in the door, they might not give you your first job, but if they give you just a little bit of knowledge to take into your journey, then it'll be enough. It's worth it. So take a look at that. Goals. Okay, so you have to have a vision of what you want. You know, whether it be directing or producing or being a journalist, you kind of have to look ahead and say, I want to do this in the next 5-10 years, right? You hear about 5-year plans. When I was in school trying to get out into production, I gave myself a 10-year plan. I said, when I get out into the production world, I'm going to be a producer by the time I am 30. So I was around 20 getting into the production world. And I said, I want, by the time I'm 30, like to have a good, legit credit as a producer, working on a real show, not just some little small, like public access, cable access. I wanted it to be like a real, legit show. I actually missed it by like about a year. I was 31 by the time I got my first co-producer credit. But still, like you have to kind of create that end zone for yourself, somewhere where you know you're going to go. Otherwise, you are just going to keep kind of going, and you're not going to have a specific direction. So create goals for yourself. Come up with a path that you're going to go, and whether you put it on paper, whether you just tell people about it, so you have a level of accountability. Like I've been working on an independent film, and back in 2015, before I even got started, I was telling people about it. I'm going to make this film. Because then when you see them the next couple of days or whatever, they're going to be like, hey, how's your film going? And then if you haven't done it yet, you have a level of accountability where you're like, ooh, I got to get on that. So create goals for yourself and follow them, and know that sometimes they can change, right? Be flexible with them. Know that you might start somewhere, but it could start to veer off into a different direction. But just set the goals. like when you do Google Maps, right? And you set a location you're going to go to. Okay, that's where you're going to go. You might end up going off to get some gas. You might end up going off to get some food before you land there, but you're still going to get to that destination. So set your destination for where you want to land with your career. So breaking into the industry is the toughest thing to do. It's not easy, especially now. Right now, as you may have heard, between the strikes of last year, AI, all the things, productions going out of state, going to Ireland of all places, and things like that. Basically, places where they're giving more tax incentive. So there's less work out here. That's just the reality of it. They're trying to kind of force the hand of these producers and production companies that are making the decisions to go to out-of-state places like Georgia, Vancouver, any place where there's a higher tax incentive. But that's the reality. Does it mean that you can't get in? No. It just definitely makes it a little bit harder than it was, say, when I got in. With that said, there's still opportunities, because when you look at content creation as a whole, there's so many different paths. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to be working production or in TV. You can do podcasting, you can do streaming, there's lots of different things to do. So, don't worry too much about that. Just know that it's hard, and you do need to have connections, and you need to know somebody. You need to have somebody that you've interacted with and networked with to get your foot in the door. Because if you go on LinkedIn and you apply for internships, you're just a stack of 100 resumes that got turned in. Unless you actually know somebody who's at the place you're trying to apply for, the odds of you getting pushed to the top of that list for the people that are actually doing the hiring to select you, it's not very high. So if you actually know somebody at that place and then you apply, they're going to whitelist you and they're going to get you an opportunity. But that comes from knowing somebody. It comes from networking and interacting with people. And the cool thing is you can go on LinkedIn nowadays and say there's a show you like working on, and you look at the credits on the show and you see that this director directs the show. You could go on LinkedIn, you could go on social media, you could follow them, you could interact with them. Sometimes those people post stuff and they don't get any comments. And if you get in their comments, you might be able to slide into the DMs. Next thing you know, you're getting assistant work. You're getting an opportunity, because just like me, when people who want this, when I meet somebody who's like, I want this, it gives me more motivation to try to help them. And so if you tell people like, this is what I want to do, and I want to get into the business, they might be willing to help you. It's just how you pitch it and how you present yourself. So try to know somebody, try to interact with people who are in that world that you want to get in. Okay. Standing out is the biggest thing you can do once you kind of get in, because again, you're just one name out of a bunch of names. And when you get your opportunity, if you don't go in there and give the very cliched, 110%, 1,000%, whatever it is, you're not going to stand out. You have to do stuff that nobody asked you to do. I used to, when I was working on the Oscars in 2000, I had just worked on the American Music Awards, and I went into the copy room and I saw that they had all the colored paper kind of stacked by color, and it was just very OCD, very organized, like you would see at Kinko's or whatever, or FedEx office. And so when I came back to the Oscars office, where I was a full-time PA, I went into the copy room and it was not organized at all. And so I went to my production coordinator. I said, hey, I'm not doing anything right now. Can I just start organizing the copy room? And she's like, yeah, go ahead. So I went to the copy room and just started organizing stuff, and putting things in a place where it made more sense. I started going to the kitchen, and I would go and make sure all the sodas, because all the different sodas in there, I'd make sure the logo was facing out, and just everything was organized and neat and clean. And I would do stuff that just nobody asked me to do. I had to pick up a camera guy. They flew in this camera guy from the East Coast, and he has what's called a jib, which is a big arm that can move around and capture some really cool images from up top. And I pick him up from the airport with this big cube truck, and I take him to the venue, which is the Shrine Auditorium in downtown. And at that point, I could have just dropped off his stuff, and that would have been it. But he had to take all his stuff upstairs to the balcony because that's where his jib was going to be set up. So I brought all his stuff with him, and he was blown away. He was like, "I can't believe you. Why did you do that?" And I was like, "'Cause why not? You know." I actually took him back once the show was over. I took him back home, and same thing, dropped him off the airport with all his gear, helped him take off the gear, and he gave me like a $50 tip. I was like, wow, $50. I mean, this is 2000, so that's a lot of money back then. And it's funny now because I'm still friends with him, and he sees all the accomplishments I'm doing now, getting executive producer jobs, things like that. And he's like, I knew you back then. I knew you back then. And he reminds me of the effort I put in. And if you don't put that effort in, you won't stand out. So you have to put the effort in. Get there early, stay late. Just do everything you can, to make sure people say, wow, we're bringing that person on for the next gig. That's how you get work. That's how you stay in the business, standing out and making people say, I want that person on because they're not going to complain. They're going to show up early. They're going to leave late, and they're going to do stuff nobody asked them to do. So stand out. I mentioned earlier mentors, and it's so important. It's so important to find people who are in the field that you want to be in, and get some time with them. Ask them for 30 minutes, more if possible, and tell them you'll buy them a coffee. Tell them you'll buy them lunch. Tell them whatever it is to get that opportunity. Because if it's a lunch, it's not that much, $20, $40, wherever. Coffee, $5, $10. Most of the time they won't even take your money. They'll just be like, oh, you know what? No, that's fine. Let's go. And now with Zoom, you can just do a Zoom meeting, and like that's what I do now. I can't really go out. I have a kid now, and I don't have time to like go out and have a coffee with people. So I just say, hey, let's set a Zoom call. We'll chat, do 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour. It just depends on my schedule. But you have to find people who are willing to impart to you the lessons they've learned, and give you a level of guidance, and hopefully give you some inspiration, because you're going to need it. You need that to keep moving forward. Speaking of mentorship, this gentleman right here, his name is Louis J. Horvitz, and he is a multi-Emmy winning director. He directed the Oscars, Emmys, anything that's live, he's directed. And I worked with him on the Oscars in 2000, and this photo was from the Emmys. And he took a liking to me. He was like part Cuban, I think, and he saw that I was a person of color, and I think he was like, I want to help this kid because I could tell he's busting his butt. And so this was at the Emmys. He just won the Emmy while directing the show. So he's directing the Emmys, okay? And he's nominated as Best Director for the Oscars. And so while he's in the truck, he's calling cameras. All right, nominee 1, nominee 2. And then they announce the winner, and they say, Louis J. Horvitz. He cuts to himself in the video truck while he's directing. They hand him the Emmy, and he's like, oh, thank you to my mom and my dad. And then, all right, cut to my mom and dad who are out in the audience. Cut to my wife. And it was the coolest thing because he's like multitasking. He's giving his Emmy speech while he's working in the video truck. So epic. And he's been like a hero to me for so many years. And at the end of the night, I went to the governor's gala, and I saw him. I was like, hey, can I take a picture with you? He's like, yeah, come on in. And he's like, hold the Emmy, which you see me holding the bottom of the Emmy there. He's like, this is your future. And I was like, whoa, like, what? Are you serious? Like, why are you telling me this? Like, we're not that close, but he was giving me that level of inspiration, that just telling me that this was something I might have the possibility of doing. And it stuck with me. It stuck with me for years. And I still, even though I've only worked with him like maybe a dozen times, every time I just learned so much from him. And he's been a great mentor. And we had lunch last year. We're due for another one. And he gave me more information, gave me book recommendations that I love and have helped guide my path, and given me tips on just mental things that you can like a mantra. Like one of the things I tell myself, I say, I'm one of the best, I'm one of a kind, many great things will come to me. And I'll do this when I'm walking my dog, I'll do this when I'm taking a shower, and I just say in my head, I'm one of the best, I'm one of a kind, many great things will come to me. And you have to believe it. And I do believe it. I believe I'm one of the best in the industry at what I do. I am one of a kind because if you look at who does this sort of job, there are not that many Filipinos. There really aren't any Filipinos that do show running at the level that I'm doing it. And, if you tell yourself you're going to get good things, if you say good things will come to me, you'd be surprised. Good things will come to you. So you kind of have to just put it out there, say it and believe it. Positive attitude. I mentioned that earlier. It's just like I walk around. One of my mentors, the gentleman who I mentioned earlier, my teacher's husband, I worked with him on a documentary series, really low level stuff that aired on like KCAL, and it was just like interviews and reenactments, and there was no cool celebrities on these shows. And at the end of the project, he said, all right, well, we're wrapping up. You did a great job. Really stood out. What do you want to do now? And I said, I want to work on the Oscars. I want to work on the big shows. That looks cool. I want to do that. I want to dress up. And he picked up a phone and he called the Oscars office right in front of me. It was the coolest thing. I was like, oh my God. He called the Oscars office and said, I got the guy for you. Give him a call. Like the Oscars is about to start up in a couple of weeks production. And I got a call the next week because of the attitude I brought to the table with everything I did. And he told me, the biggest piece of advice he ever told me, he's just like, when you get in there, just positive attitude. And I already had that, but he just reinforced it. And I walk around with a big smile on my face. I laugh. I ask people how they are. I just try to keep the energy good, And listen, there's bad times. There's stressful times. I've definitely been guilty of being stressed and being short and saying things sometimes I probably shouldn't have. I always try to apologize afterwards. I always try to zero myself out and remember the positive part. But it's not always going to be that way. So you do your best, try to be positive and in all your interactions. Because it will be a calling card when people think, hey, I want to have this person on my team. That's going to be your calling card. That person was really good. Augie was really good. Wendy was really good. Whatever the case, just smile. It's the easiest thing to do. Just smile, and you'd be surprised what comes from that. Burnout. So when you actually are in the industry, so this is the staying in part, right? You've got your foot in the door. You're working already, you're doing shows and all that. Sometimes you get burnt out because you are staying really long hours. Production is not a short hour thing. It is early calls, it's late wraps. I've had less than a 5-hour turnaround sometimes where I had to be right back and have very little sleep. And you get burnt out, you get tired, you get a little grumpy. So you have to try to do things that will help you avoid getting burnt out to stay in the industry. Because if you don't and you start getting burnt out, then the positive attitude thing is a lot harder to do. So you need to create things that you can do. Say you're at a low level and you're not at a high level of producing or whatever, your direction you're trying to do. This is again creating opportunities. Do things, shoot things, do a commercial for a friend, do a commercial for a small restaurant you like, right? Do something where your creative energy gets to be used, right? Do things that allow you to be the boss in that particular situation. Nowadays, it's social media. You could do a live stream. You could do a TikTok channel, whatever it is, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But in the end, just to avoid burnout, try to do something creative on the side. Try to have things that you can do that aren't just work. You're not working 24/7. You have to allow for a little bit of hobbies, a little bit of creative, execution on your part so that you feel like you're doing things creatively if you are a creative person. So do your best to avoid burnout by creating, opportunities for yourself like that. Communicate goals. I mentioned earlier goals, right? But you have to tell people, you do it for yourself when you say, yeah, I'm going to be a producer in 10 years. You have to tell people that. You have to say, hey, I'd love to work with you. Like if you're working on a set and you meet somebody like that you want to work with them, tell them that. Say, I want to work with you. I want to I want to intern for you or be your assistant. Communicate that to people, because they're not just going to assume. They're not going to be like, hey, can Javier come over here and do this job that I don't have any idea that he's capable of doing? No, like you have to be like, listen, I want to do this job. I'm learning how to do it already. I just need an opportunity. Okay, great. You tell people that. I told a producer by the name of Ken Ehrlich. He produced the Grammys for 40 years. I worked with him on many projects throughout the years, and I had a meeting with him. I asked for like 30 minutes of his time, came into his office, and he knew me at that point as a script supervisor, production supervisor. That's basically somebody who deals with the writers and builds a script out, but also creates like a run of show document, things like that. Not a producer level. And I sat with him. I said, listen, Ken, I want to produce. I want this. I know you produce shows, you do all these shows, and you have some opportunities to like, if you ever needed a producer, I want you to know I want to be in line for that. And he just so happened, he had a project coming up. And if I didn't tell him that at that time, he would have thought of somebody else. And I jumped the line because I had that meeting with him, and I said, I want to do this. I get emails all the time from writers, editors, people just checking in saying, hey, I'd love to work with you. And I've hired these people because they emailed me at the right time. It just so happened I needed an editor, and, out of sight, out of mind. And sometimes you need to get in their mind by jumping ahead and sending an email. Nowadays, social media, right? Like, again, comment on somebody's post. Like that'll remind them of you. That'll keep your name in their mind because you commented on their LinkedIn page, you commented on their Instagram page, whatever the case. Just communicate your goals and connect with these people, because they're the ones who are going to give you the opportunity. But if you don't tell them you want the opportunity, they're not going to give it to you. So be very clear on what you want to do. Masterminding. This is something that it sounds really diabolical. It's like masterminding, but masterminding is from this book called Think and Grow Rich. And, it's a great book. Napoleon Hill. It came out I think the 1920s. And a lot of successful people use this book, Think and Grow Rich. And this was, again, recommended to me by Louis J. Horvitz there. That was one of the first books he recommended me. And masterminding is basically getting together with people that have shared objectives. Get together with people who want to do what you want to do. I mentioned earlier when I did my wrestling show that I shot, I got a bunch of people that wanted to do what I wanted to do. They wanted to go out and shoot stuff. They wanted to be busy, keep themselves busy, and get more experience. Find those people. Nowadays, whether it's a Facebook group, a Reddit page, whatever, like you could connect with the people that are interested in what you want and meet up and try to make each other better. One of the things that I love to do is and I'll mention a little bit later, is a group called Toastmasters, where you do public speaking and you get practice at being on a stage in front of people, because this is terrifying for most people. Like, it is scary. People get really scared of this. I've done this enough times now where it's not scary, and I could look at all of you and not be worried. I've done like an arena. I did the Toyota Arena for Mount San Antonio College, and it's 14,000 people. And I couldn't have done that if I didn't join this Toastmasters group, which helped me practice my verbalizing and speaking in front of people. So that's masterminding. There's lots of different masterminding you can do. Again, it's just finding a group of people that are trying to achieve something, and you can help each other, because everybody's got a skill set, right? Like, I was part of a men's group where we were, some people were in it for trying to be, have a better dating life. Some people were in it for just trying to have a better personal life from a professional standpoint. Some people were in it for just trying to have get fit and be more healthy in their lifestyle. And everybody could help each other in different ways. I learned a lot of financial tips from people that I never knew before, because my dad came from the Philippines and he didn't know those things. And I met somebody in this group who taught me how to start automating my finances, so that a little money goes to an account here and a little money goes to an account here, so that you don't even see it happening, but it's happening. And I never would have learned that if I wasn't part of this group. So it's important to just mastermind, find people who want to achieve what you want to achieve, and you guys will help each other. So lastly, winning, right? winning is I've been fortunate enough to, like I mentioned, win an award and get nominated for awards. But to me, winning is a state of mind of just you're doing what you want to do. You're living your life, and that comes from trying to make yourself better. Whether that's reading self-help books, doing online courses, anything that can help you learn a new skill, make your mind feel more confident that you can do something because you've put time into reading self-help books, doing online courses. I still do it all the time. And the best part is if you have a library card, Los Angeles County or LA City, you have access to tons of stuff, including LinkedIn Learning, at least in LA City. You have audiobooks. There's an app called Hoopla, which has audiobooks, regular ebooks, comic books. That's actually how I discovered it, because I like comic books, and my brother told me about it, and I was like, oh, cool, let me look at this. And I was reading comics, and I was like, oh, look, there's all these books that audiobooks. And so I'll download an audiobook, take my dog out for a walk, listen to it, and just learn, and lots of different topics, whether it's the field you're trying to get into, or like recently, like I mentioned, I have a baby, and I was listening to a lot of audiobooks about being a parent and trying to get prepared for that. So check your library, and even here at school, like just see what online things are available, because you'd be surprised, and you might be able to get a book that you might have to normally get on Audible, right? You might get it for free on the public library, and it goes to your app on your phone, and you could listen to it in the car, you could listen to it while you're walking, whatever the case, while you're working out. It's free. You pay for it. It's part of your taxes. So like, take advantage of it. Toastmasters, I mentioned again, like, so you can go, it's like toastmasters.org, I believe is the website. If you don't feel your communication skills are that good, if you don't feel like you could stand up in front of a group and lead a meeting or just say something in a meeting, this is the group for you, because I joined it a few years back after I'd been working on this Disney special for years, and they kind of basically I kind of walked away from it because they were trying to downgrade my role, and it stemmed from basically an incident where I was trying to communicate to our client, the top person. I was trying to communicate to her my vision about how the show was going to be, and it wasn't working. It was after 6 hours of other meetings, and your brain's tired. It's hard to get through to people sometimes, and so I took from that situation. I analyzed. I said, what could have I done better? And I said it was communication. I could have charmed her. I could have done something to get my point across, and been able to get my what I wanted to do to happen. And so I started looking up different things, different ways to communicate, and Toastmasters came up. And I found, I lived in Los Feliz at the time, and I found a club that was located in Griffith Park, and I was able to go and meet. There was about like 20 people, and 20 people, all different likes. There was like older people who just wanted to go out and communicate and see people, right? There were people who English was a second language to them, and they wanted to be better at speaking English in front of a group of people. There were people who were autistic. There are lots of different people. There were people like me who worked in production and just wanted to be better at pitching, because if you are in production and you're trying to sell your stories and sell your ideas, you have to be able to pitch. You have to be able to get in the elevator and do an elevator pitch, which is, 15, 30 seconds before you get to that floor and that person isn't there with you. You have to be able to communicate that very succinct and tell them what you want to do. So Toastmasters is a great group for that. They're all over the place. I'm sure there's one out here in Whittier. So just take a look at it. If you want to get better at communicating, then please join this group. It's very affordable. I think it's somewhere between $30 a quarter or so. And there's no level of you don't have to show up every week. You can show up when you want to show up. And if you want to do a speech, you could do a speech. If you want to just do something that they call table topics, where they have you go up, stand in front of everybody, and you do a 3-minute. They ask you a question and you do 3 minutes on it. and that's it. So it'll help you get better because you're going to be in Zoom calls and meetings with people, and if you can't handle yourself in those meetings, then again, you're not going to last. So work on your communication skills. Toastmasters is a great place for that. So I mentioned earlier new media. I mentioned the TikToks, the Twitches. I'm a big fan of this space. You know, all this stuff came out when I was just starting in production. For me, it was like Friendster and MySpace, and then it grew to Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, as we've seen in the news. These things make you money. These things, you can create content in this space and make money, and you might not even need to go into traditional media, legacy media. You might be able to do it in this space. There's people that are doing it. There's people that are influencers that drive Lambos and all that sort of stuff and get invited to red carpets and get invited to big award shows. If you saw, I want to say it was the Grammys last week. I know the Oscars is bringing her on, but anybody familiar with Chicken Shop Date? Okay, so that girl Amelia, she's going to be the Oscars ambassador. So she's going to be like doing all these interviews and all this stuff. And she started that from a podcast, right? That's the new thing now. That's the thing that, even though it's been going on for like over a decade or so, it's the stuff that is getting the most attention. Whatever your political affiliation, you cannot deny that what Trump did with going on podcasts of very popular podcasts earned him a lot of votes in a certain sector. And Kamala unfortunately didn't. And that's where, if you don't realize the power of this current media, you will miss out. And right now, like I mentioned earlier, if you are doing traditional media and you're working in production and you're, say, at a low level producer or whatever it may be, and you want to create a side hustle, you could have an Instagram channel, you could have a Twitch channel, you could have a TikTok. The key is not having something that will affect your job. Like, you don't want to do something that is going to now make it problematic for your regular day job. So try to pick a niche sort of topic that fits within that. Like, I personally, like, if it wasn't for the fact that I have a kid right now, like, I'd be doing video game streams because I just want to play video games for 5 hours and just like do that, and you can make money from it. And I love that that's an opportunity that you have these days that you didn't have when I first started. You create your own content, like whether it be a YouTube channel about woodworking. I'm a big fan of SB Mowing on TikTok, that they go over to people's houses and mow their front yards. Love that. And that guy is able to do what he does because he gets monetization from his channels, and he's able to give people free, like, lawn mowing and all this stuff. There was one episode recently, if you didn't see it, they raised almost $1 million for this older lady who basically was living by herself, and she couldn't, do any stuff like her laundry. Like, she had to look to her neighbors for help. Through TikTok, through GoFundMe, they raised this woman about $1 million. I'm sure it's probably at $1 million now. It was at 750, I think, last I saw it. And that just shows you the power. That shows you the power of this space and what you can do with something as niche as lawn mowing. Or he also has a pressure washer channel now, which I also enjoy. So, find something that you could do on the side that doesn't necessarily affect your day job. And do it on the weekends. Do it, if it's Instagram and you're just posting, in between work or when you're at home, like, you could create content and you can end up getting branding and sponsorships and things like that. And next thing you know, that's your lifestyle. So I love the new media space. And what I would say is definitely go on all platforms. Don't just do TikTok. Don't just do Instagram, because as we saw with TikTok this last year, when the ban was coming, everybody was panicking because they were like, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on this channel, and I don't have the follower ratio from TikTok to Instagram is very different. Maybe because it's worldwide, I don't know. But the reality is, if you're not on different platforms and you don't have different revenue streams, then when one goes down and you're relying on that, then you're going to be in a situation. So if you're going to go down this route, spread it out. Like I would recommend doing YouTube channels and then using Instagram and and Facebook and TikTok as kind of promotional, little clips. Like if you do, say, for example, you're doing a podcast, right? And that's on YouTube. You take the 1 hour podcast, you do a bunch of clips, and there's AI now that will take a 1 hour podcast. You just literally drag and drop it into this AI, and it'll create 20 clips with subtitles, and it transcribes it and finds what's interesting. And now you don't even need to do the work. You just pop that, you put it on TikTok, you put it on Instagram, any other, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I had an interesting situation. I was working on the Emmys, Creative Arts Emmys, which I do for the last 2 years now. And I ran into this Netflix executive at the after party. And I knew him because I'd worked on these Netflix as a joke specials 2 years ago. But we weren't close or anything. And I'd been posting my videos from talks like this and posted them on my LinkedIn page. And he walked up to me and he just started talking to me. I didn't walk up to him. He just brought it up and said he mentioned my video. And I saw another executive from NBC, same thing. He's like, I love your video content that you've been posting. I was like, oh, cool. Again, top of mind, right? These executives are the people that make the decisions about hiring. And now they're seeing my videos and saying, oh, what about that guy, right? So put your stuff on multiple platforms because you never know who's on what platform. I have a producer friend I work with. He's only on X for whatever reason, or Twitter. He doesn't go on any of the other platforms. And there's one other person who's only on LinkedIn. So post your stuff if you're going to post stuff on these different platforms. Share it around. So lastly, before we wrap things up, like I said, social media is great. I'd love to connect with all of you. If any of you have questions after this, we'll do a Q&A right now. I'll do a little meet and greet. But stay connected with me. Reach out if you have questions and things of that nature. I'm busy, but I'm always happy to reply when I can. So don't hesitate to hit me up, and we'll stay connected. I love to see your journeys. I want one day for you to walk up to me on a set and say, "Remember when you went to Rio Honda College? We met there." I love that. That would be my dream. That's one of the reasons I do this, because I want that to happen, and I want that to happen more, where the future of entertainment are people that I've spoken with. So let's stay connected. And I had a great time here. I want to just summarize this all with, when we talk about what is success. Success is a state of mind. It's really feeling that you're doing what you love. You don't have to win an Emmy. You don't have to win awards. It's nice, but what boils down to it is you're happy, you're healthy, and you're doing what you love, and that comes from analyzing things ahead of time, trying to put yourself down a path that will give you these opportunities and the lifestyle that you want to live. Learn skills. Don't stop learning. I never stop learning. I'm constantly listening to audiobooks and Masterclass. If you're familiar with Masterclass, I just got a subscription a couple months ago. I watched one thing on FBI negotiators. I watched another thing on forensic pathology. That's like Silence of the Lambs type stuff. Because all those skills apply in your regular day-to-day communication. And there's a lot of great stuff. If you're trying to be an actor, there's actors on there. If you're trying to be a writer, there's writers on there. If you're trying to be a cook, there's cooks on there. It's like $100-something for the year, I believe, and lots of classes. So, lots of different skills you can learn. There's different platforms, like I mentioned, library card, audiobooks. Just don't stop. Never think that, okay, I've reached a certain point, I don't have to learn anything anymore. The way technology is, you have to learn. I'm learning AI right now. I started learning different AI, and I used it to put a pitch deck together for a show I'm trying to create. And if I didn't have the AI, the deck would look completely different. So learn the new AI. There's so many different AI out there. Some will benefit you from a scheduling standpoint. It'll help you schedule better. As I mentioned, there's the one that will do clips for you. There's so many different AI. Take time to learn it and see which ones could benefit you, and make sure you're learning skills as they come, and the new technology that's coming, especially within the entertainment industry. You have to, because you will get left behind. When I got into the industry, people were doing typewriters. When I walked in, people were doing laptops. And because I already had skills with computers, I was at their level because they had just started doing the same stuff too. So keep learning skills, and communicate. Just keep talking to people, connect with people, mastermind with people, set goals with people, just nonstop. If you want to succeed, you have to do that. It's just part of mass comms, that's what you're doing. So make sure you're doing that. And with that said, lastly, just mindset, just positivity. This is the think part of it, right? This is just having the right mindset going into things, and not being negative, not being pessimistic, not saying, oh, of course that happens to me, right? The dark cloud that hangs over your head, don't let it hang over your head. It doesn't need to hang over your head. You dictate how things will be in your life. You just have to stay positive. There will be ups and downs, but you just have to keep a positive mindset, and the goodness will come to me. I promise that. Whether it's building a vision board, whether it's just laying your plans out on paper, just do these things and you will achieve what you want to achieve. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys sitting and hanging out for a while. I'm open to some questions if you have any. Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
So I kind of just wanted to understand a little bit more about your career as a producer and director. What do you think is like the biggest difference between both?
Yeah, so they're similar. They're similar. I would say producer is a bigger. You're covering a lot more stuff. You're looking at a lot more things, whereas a director, you're focused on capturing the visuals, and getting things on camera the way they need to look. Whereas as a producer, I'm supervising that. I'm supervising the music cues. I'm supervising video packages. I'm supervising script. I'm supervising. You'd be surprised. Like on Saturday at the Writers Guild Awards, I looked at they were doing a shot of the host, and the host was in front of this curtain. And I could just see this little small thing, and I was like, what is that? And I walked outside, I walked up to it, I was like, this little hole in the curtain. And I stuck my finger through it. I was like, I had to go talk to the art director. I'm like, hey, can we fix this? Like, it's right behind the host. We're going to see it for half of the show. So they had to go in and fix it. Director, they might be looking at that stuff, but like clearly they weren't, because it was something that I had to point out. So producers do more. There's various levels of producing. Keep in mind, there's like the low level where you're doing research and you're doing documents and that sort of thing. And as you go higher and higher into your career, and you get more and more responsibilities. In the end, producing is just getting things done, and it just starts at one level and works its way up higher and higher. And then when you get to the showrunner, executive producer level, then you're doing a lot more. You're focused on booking talent. You're focused on the graphics, the way the graphics look, like it's all that stuff. Whereas a director is more, they show up the week of the show. They might do a little prep work depending on how big of a show it is. But they're more like focused on that. So that's the difference. They're not, and you can do both. Some of my mentors have done both. You can straddle both lines as long as you have the support. Like if I was an executive producer but also directing, then I would just make sure I had more producers underneath me so that I could say, hey, you're doing music, I don't want to worry about that. You're doing video packages, I don't want to worry about that. You're just going to show it to me and I'm going to approve it. But I'm going to be focused on directing. So, so you just need a good support team. And same with directing too, with directing, again, depending on how big the show is, you might have a couple extra associate directors or stage managers to help you guide the flow of people on and off stage and rolling packages and all that sort of stuff, because that's a very intricate thing. And I don't want to downplay directing, but in my world of live television, that's you have to make sure the show gets off air on time. A lot of times you're up against news, you're up against things that you're told like, hey, you only have 3 hours, you have to get off the air on time. So directors and their team have to do that with the producers. That's a collaboration at that point, because like, for example, if we're in the middle of a show and we're like, oh, we're 2 minutes over right now. As a producer, I'm going to say, hey, the last 2 packages in the show, we have B packages that are shorter. I'm going to tell the director that we're going to the B package. It's 30 seconds, not a minute and a half. So we shaved off a minute, right? I'm going to tell him that. They're going to execute, and then we've now saved a minute and got ourselves closer to being back on time. So, it's a collaboration. But they're just, I would just say directing is more technical and producing is more creative and management. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Branding is huge, and thank you for asking that. Like that kind of goes to what I was saying about the social media content, right? Like, I put if you were on my social media, you're going to see a couple different things. You're going to see me posting about the shows I work on and what I'm doing. I don't do it to brag. I do it because I want people to know I'm an executive producer doing live award shows with the biggest talent or whatever that may be. So like if you go look at my Instagram right now, it shows the last thing I did was the Writers Guild Awards. I'm very grateful to my crew and my cast and all that. But I make it very clear that I'm the producer of the show, right? I also posted the fact that I was going to be speaking here at Rio Hondo, and people saw that and they're like, oh, he does public speaking too. So my brand, when people look at it, is that I'm this producer / public speaker. And that's my focus when I'm on social media and I'm posting stuff. Do not use social media to post politics. Do not use social media to, complain about movies or things like that. Use it as a tool. You're going to connect with people and things like that. That's all great, but don't use your wall, your feed as anything that can bring negativity. Think of it as a brand and what you're putting out there. It's commercials, it's content to let people know, like, this is what I'm trying to do. Again, like it's getting it out there to people that this is what I'm doing, and you never know what that one person who saw it on whatever feed you decide to post it is going to do. They might give you an opportunity because they see that you're doing this stuff, right? So be mindful of that when you are posting stuff, and try to keep that aligned with what you're trying to present yourself as. So whether that be a producer, writer, front of camera, whatever it is, like, hey, I'm doing this shoot with on a red carpet. Like, you're posting the pictures not for bragging. You're posting it to like let people know, like, this is what I'm doing. I'm out here. Hit me up. That's pretty much, what you should be thinking about from a branding standpoint. Any other questions?
I also have a question. I wanted to ask you, earlier in your presentation, you mentioned the fact that you always have to keep a positive mindset when it comes to just anything you do in the industry. And you also mentioned a little bit of the struggles. Like, there are times that you can't just, work through it. My question is, has there ever been a time where it got really bad to the point where maybe you even considered even leaving the industry? Because I know that there's a lot of times where controversy, anything like that could just really be very effective towards your mental health or just in general your life overall. So I wanted to ask if there's been ever a time where you've maybe even considered backing out of the industry, and if so, what did you do to help you continue forward?
Yeah, great question. So I touched on it briefly, burnout, right? When you reach that level of burnout and you're sitting at the office and it's 2 a.m., like this used to happen to me. I'd be at the office 2 a.m. and I was in my 20s. And so, I wanted to go be out with my friends at the bar. Like, I'm like, oh, last call. Like, that was in my head, but I was like thinking, do I want to do this? Those thoughts definitely came into my head. And that's where the burnout part of it came. You have to have perspective on things, like you have to pull back and be like, well, what am I doing right now? I'm working on a cool show and I'm getting paid, right? Like that's glass half full, glass half empty. And you have to pull back and again, positivity over negativity, right? Because if you're the type of person who's glass half empty and you're sitting there and you're like, oh God, I'm here late again. And I don't get to go out and hang out with my friends and blah blah blah. Like if you just let that cloud start building and building and building, then yes, you're going to start to have those sort of things. And if you don't love what you're doing, if you're not like really in love with what you're doing, then you're not going to be willing to put those hours in. I'm at a point now where I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to stay up till 2 a.m. I don't have to come back in at 6 a.m. and have a 4-hour turnaround. But that's because I paid my dues at the beginning of my career. It's one of those things where you have to understand, again, the industry is not easy. It is not an easy industry. You're going to have struggles. You're going to have breaking points. You're going to have second guesses. I know a couple people that left the industry after the fires because they hadn't been working, and now the fires happened, and they're just worried about the air quality, and they're just like, you know what, I'm just getting out. Like this is the final straw. I'm just getting out, and bless their hearts. Like I wish they had more opportunities like I seem to be getting. But part of that is how it's not luck for me, right? Like everything that comes to me is because I am putting the content out. I am reaching out to people and having quick Zoom calls. The job I'm about to do, for example, I got that through scheduling a meeting with this producer I worked with. She's a great producer. I've worked with her a bunch of times, and I really want to work with her. And so last year and the year before, we had a quick, I think, 30-minute meeting and just connected. And next thing you know, I got brought on for this project. And that's because I put that out there, and I'm making the effort to get the opportunities. So, just to bring it back around, like, yes, you're going to be burnt out. You're going to question whether or not that's the direction you need to go down. And that's fine. Like, it might be the right thing. You might realize I'm not happy doing this. I want to go down a different path. And maybe that's going into like sports instead of being in entertainment, right? Or going into corporate and creating content for Google or LinkedIn or any of these sort of places because you have a regular 9-to-5 job and it's more stable, that sort of thing. I've definitely thought about it, especially with my wife, and then the kid. Like, I'm like, okay, so I've had calls. I've had interviews with Amazon, a couple different production companies for full-time jobs, even though that's not what I want to do. I want to do freelance. I want to go from show to show to show, project to project. I love that. For me, it's one of those cool things where it's the first day of school and last day of school every time for me on a project, right? I start a project, I see people I haven't seen in a while, and at the end of it, we all hug, thank you so much. I move on to my next project, different people sometimes. Some people maybe from the last job, some people not, but it's like a new experience. And for me, I love that. So I don't want to leave that, but if I'm in a situation where I'm not getting work or, we need a more stable lifestyle, I'm open to those opportunities. So when you reach that point where you are thinking like, is this for me? Think about it. Think about, do I love what I'm doing? Think about, like, is there other options that I can still accomplish the same sort of thing, whether it's, content creation or whatever. And make your decisions based on that. Like right now, what I'm doing is I'm doing production, and then I've created this side hustle of doing public speaking. I've been paid, thousands of dollars for appearances. And like, that's pretty cool. Like, and like I get to do it while hopefully inspiring a couple of you. Right. So like, that's a side hustle for me. That's what I mentioned earlier. Like, creating a little thing on the side, like that's what this is for me. And I only do it a couple times a year because I am so busy with work. But when I get to do it, it's so rewarding. And like, so, when you get to that burnout point, think about it as a whole, see if there's a way to get through it by just, creating something for yourself or just going down a different path that's still in the same direction. Because I think if you started going down that path, there was a reason for it. But maybe that's not the job you want to do anymore, right? Like when I was doing production supervision for a long time and I got kind of stagnant, and that was when I was kind of having those thoughts, to a point where a director actually brought it up to me, and she was like, you don't want to do this anymore, do you? Because she could tell I was not happy. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And then a couple weeks later is when I had that conversation with that producer, and I started having meetings with people and verbalizing and communicating my goals to people who were in the position to give me those opportunities. So that's what I recommend when you get to that point and you're just like, this isn't fun anymore. Then you have to think about it. And again, don't do something that you're not happy with, you're gonna that's what makes you grow older and more bitter about life, and life's too short, you know. So does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Yeah. Anybody else? Hi. Yeah. No. Yeah.
I just want to remind you of the opportunity of diversity that you possess, and I want you to use it, be happy, enjoy it, have fun with it, and move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity, it's interesting because it's such a hot button topic nowadays, right? Especially with the current administration. And it's, to me, I think the best way to describe, and I do a whole different speech about this, but to me, diversity is uniqueness, right? And even though some of you are Latino or Latina or white or Asian, whatever it may be, you are unique. Every story is its own story, right? And that's why when I say that mantra to myself, I'm one of the best. I'm one of a kind. I am one of a kind. I really am, and I believe that because first off, you don't see too many 6'2" Filipinos, so that right off the bat. But then I'm one of the few people in the industry that do what I do that are from my culture. The list is sadly very small, and part of that's because again, when you have parents who come from a different country, they guide you down a certain path of more stability, whether that be jobs in nursing or marketing, accounting, the traditional corporate sort of jobs, right? And that's fine. I just knew that I wanted something else in my life, and so that I went down this other path. But right now, yeah, when I was booking the show, talent-wise, as I was trying to book people and talent and different names, I always keep diversity as a diverse person. I'm always trying to make sure the playing field is looking like how it should look. One of the tricky parts is and this is where sometimes you have to be, and this is why I think when you get in as a diversity type hire early on, that's great. If you get a diversity type job later on and they throw you in as a director or something, but you might not have the skill set to be in that, it could be a little trickier because then you're getting set up for failure. So, be mindful of the opportunities that are being presented to you, because you also don't want to, not represent properly, and you want to be able to do the job. But yes, when you're out there, there are people who are, even though the policies these days aren't necessarily aligned with that, there are people who are hiring who still want to keep, the things going in the direction that they have been going the last 4 years. And, I think, again, one of the things I talk about a lot is there's a saying that the comedian Steve Martin said that, be so good they can't question you. Be so good that they can't use your color as something to have, like, oh, he's only here because he's brown, he's only here because he's white, she's only here because she's Hispanic, whatever that case. Don't let them say that, because you prove that you deserve to be there. Have the skills, like I mentioned, have the skills that when you go in there, they're blown away. And it's not about your color or whatever. Like, I don't the thing is, I think, and I've always felt this way, like, I don't think people thought of me as the brown kid on production. It was just like, I came in there and I crushed it. I did everything that was asked of me and more. And all they thought of was, like, that's the kid who comes in and crushes it every time. And so, like, be so good that they can't question your diversity. Okay? Yeah.
Besides the excel and the positive attitude that you already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, this is again, it's like word of mouth. Like what'll end up happening is we do a show and it's like 8 o'clock at night, and somebody's like, "Hey, we need a parking PA tomorrow. Like, who do you know, right?" And it's literally they're gonna ask the PAs who are on that crew, like, "Hey, who do you know?" Or they'll think about the PAs they've hired before. So it's not one of those things where we're gonna go on LinkedIn and post PA or Mandy.com or any of these websites. That does happen sometimes, especially if you're like in a area that might be a little bit limited. Like say you're doing a shoot out of town, or in another state or something, and I've hired people through I've hired people through Craigslist sometimes, and it's just one of those things where it just depends on the density. Like here in Los Angeles, there's just a lot of people, but it is word of mouth. It is again like making yourself somebody that people think about immediately when they're like, "Hey, I need a PA," and whether that be because you worked with them on something already and you crushed it, or because you talked to somebody that you knew who was a PA and said, "Hey, I just want to get my foot in the door. I'll do anything," right? Because then when that person is in that office and they say, "Hey, we need a parking PA tomorrow," your name might come up, but it requires you verbalizing that to that person who might give you that opportunity, the networking of it all, right? It's networking and verbalizing your goal to that person. That's what gets you that opportunity, because we're not going to a website. Most of the time we're not going to a website. It's word of mouth. It's people that you remember from a last project you worked on, that sort of thing. So again, that's where it's tough. Because if you don't know somebody, then it becomes a little bit harder. So, you got to communicate and hopefully find the people that will give you that opportunity. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Shoot. Yeah, go ahead.
With AI becoming more advanced and being used, are you afraid, or do you think that using AI will cause people to lose specific skills in different areas, or possibly taking jobs away from others?
Yeah, great question. Listen, technology will not go backwards. Okay, so technology will not go backwards. So the reality is you have to start figuring out how these things work, because they are going to possibly minimize jobs like editors, people who you can put in your whatever you're writing, an article or whatever, throw it into Chat GPT and it edits for you, right? There's lots of jobs that could be lost from it. The way I look at it is if you learn these skills and these techniques, you will be hired. That's the way I look at it. So the people who aren't going to be hired are the people who aren't learning these things, who are choosing to be scared of it, and thinking that it's Terminator 2 and The Matrix and all that sort of stuff. It's not going to go away. So you have to learn it, and the more you learn it, the more hireable you will be. I just worked with somebody. We were building packages for the show. There was 2 honorees on the show, and one of them was David Lynch. One of them was Vince Gilligan, who created Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And what my associate producer, who I brought onto the project, did was he went on ChatGPT and whatever other AI he was using to generate lists of the most iconic scenes from these projects, and we took that and then we gave that to the editor. We said, "Hey, these are the scenes you should look for to build this package," and it helped us greatly. And we, in the end, we didn't let AI do the whole thing. It was just a tool. It's a tool that got us a lot farther down the line than we would have had to before, because before you would have to watch the whole thing, take notes and do all this stuff. The way AI works now is you can go and it's gonna pull all this data that's on the internet and give you all this information, and that just helped make this package better. But I didn't let AI produce the package. I produced the package. I had an editor, a human being, doing the cutting and making the package. So use AI as a tool. It's there to be used as a tool, and the more, again, tools and skills you have in your toolbox, the better you're going to be, the more hireable you will be. So don't be afraid of it. you do need to be mindful of it to a certain extent and make sure you're not putting too much information sometimes. But I think there's so many different AI out there like that do so many different things. So just don't be afraid and take like there's courses right now where you can just like sample different AI for a little small amount, 15-20 minutes, and at least understand what they are so that you can say, oh, that one might benefit me, that one might not. Cool. Who's next? Is he?
Good morning.
Hi.
I'm curious your perspective from streaming services. You've got your top tiers, and then you have all these ones that are coming around, and they're just growing by many numbers. What is the industry planning, or what do you see in the next couple of years doing with all this content that's coming out?
Yeah, I mean, streaming we've seen this transition. It's happened the last couple of years, right? Where traditional cable platforms and regular networks are all slowly moving. And there's no bigger sign of it that the fact that the Oscars this year will be streamed on Hulu simultaneously as it is on ABC. That's a very clear indicator that they're like pushing this old one away to move towards this next one. Netflix, right? They've got into the live game doing boxing and WWE, and they're doing SAG Awards this weekend. So it's all moving in this direction, which is the streaming direction. Will those things exist? Will the traditional networks, ABC, NBC, Fox, all those things exist in the same way? I don't think so. I think those things are going to go away, and it's just going to be all streaming. Kind of like there's no more VHS and Betamax. It's all, or even DVDs for that matter. For some people, it's all Roku and everything is streaming, right? So yeah, things are going down that direction, and those are sort of going to be the new platforms. The way I look at it, which I think is really cool, is like when you open up your Roku, Apple TV Plus, any of these platforms, you open it up and you could pick your app, whether it's HBO Max, Hulu, whatever. YouTube is right there. So it's just the same click away from going to one of these other sites. And if you're creating content, that means you're just the same click away that White Lotus is, right? Or you're just the same click away as Squid Game. And that's cool because from a content creation standpoint, that means if you go create something on YouTube that is of interest to people, you could eliminate the whole middleman situation, right? You don't have to go sell your idea to a network or a studio or anything like that. You can create it on this platform, and some people will watch it, and you can build followings through it. So that's the way I look at it, where it's like, don't look at streaming as like a bad thing in that way. I like that the playing field has been leveled, where you can get to a YouTube video just as quick as you could get to an Emmy award-winning show. And I think that's rad. I think it just means that when I was getting into the entertainment industry, what we had was something called public access television, and it was basically you go to the Comcast or Spectrum office and they had a studio and you could shoot something, but it would only go out to that specific region. So like what Wayne's World, if you're familiar with Wayne's World from Saturday Night Live, that was a public access show, or Between the Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, right? That's kind of what that was. And if you created content, it would only go out to that small amount of people. Now you create content, it goes out to the world. Like you can get your content in Africa, in China, in Russia, all these places. And that's awesome. I have a friend who creates social media content, and I was blown away. I clicked on his page. I hadn't seen him for a while, and I kind of helped him get a start doing social media. And I clicked on his page, and I had family members who were following him. And I was like, why are you following this guy? And it was just because his content resonated with them. And it was a worldwide content. You try to pick niches where you could get into different spaces, because like certain things are worldwide, So, back to your original question. Yeah, streaming is all going down that direction. That's the route it's taking. And the old traditional media is going to start to phase out, and that's just where it's going. But I think it's cool because you can be part of that now very easily. So, yeah, cool. You answer your question? Cool. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi. So you spoke about learning. That was a big thing, obviously, throughout life. But if you can think back to school, is there any class in general that you would say is a big worth, especially like for students right now that maybe are thinking about what to take while they're still in school?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it just depends on the path you're going down. I took a lot of stuff. So I have a certificate. I don't even have a BA, AA. I have a certificate from Mount San Antonio College that is television broadcasting. And part of that certificate was taking just anything relating to television production. So I took voiceover classes. I took public speaking classes. I took the traditional production classes where we had like a news. We had an agreement with Covina we did their news, weekly news through our, we had a studio. So we did news, we did sports, we did all that stuff. So it just depends. Like for me, that was super beneficial because I was able to go out and shoot projects and be in a live environment, even though it was low stakes, if you will, because it was just local TV and all that. People were still like shouting and nervous and, because you don't want things to go wrong. But it depends on what you're trying to do. Like I took radio, I did a radio show and it helps you again. You're doing public speaking, but you're also kind of formatting a show and going from item to item and going into the song and then coming out back announcing it, and you're learning how to kind of do that stuff. So it just depends on the route you're going down. If you're trying, what are you trying to do? On air, okay, like in front of camera? Cool. Yeah. So like for you, 100% public speaking, 100%, doing courses where you get practice in front of stuff. And then like I know people who, like I mentioned the wrestling thing, I know people who would go and do the same thing where they're like, hey, can I do your play-by-play or can I do your commentary for your stuff? And now you're getting a reel built, because if you're trying to be in front of camera, you have to have a reel. You have to have something to show for, like, hey, this is what I did for this school. This is what I did for this event. That shows how confident you are in front of camera, how well you can read a teleprompter, how well you can segue from a package to the next item. So if you are going down that route, 100% public speaking, voiceover, the actual production, keeping in mind like, okay, yeah, I want to be on camera, because listen, there's not everybody wants to be on camera. Some people want to be behind the scenes. That's where I was told like, hey, you should try to do that stuff. But I was like, you know what? I like sitting behind the camera. I like creating the content. So that's where my path ended up going. But if that's where you want to go, when you join a production class, let them know. Like, let them know you want to be the person on camera, because most people are too shy to do that, And if you want to do that, cool. You already know, right? So do those sort of courses that help build your confidence, being in front of a camera, being in front of people, controlling an audience, that sort of stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, podcast now is great. There's different things you can do that help you kind of just be a host, right? Because being a host, we were talking earlier about Ryan Seacrest, and Ryan Seacrest is a beast. That guy is a savage, and he just went out, started doing radio shows, but then he would pick up these little tiny rinky-dink sort of hidden camera shows at first, and then he worked his way into American Idol, and then he worked his way into New Year's Rockin' Eve, and then he worked and just hustled and hustled and hustled. But it was all because he knew the path he wanted to go down, and he went out there and like made it clear that's what he wanted to do. So it's good. It's good that you know that already. So now all you have to do is just get that experience. And again, there's resources that, whether it's masterclass or whatever, where you can watch somebody talking about doing that sort of stuff and be more confident with it. So it's good. Cool. Anybody else?
All right. So this is going to be the last question right here.
No pressure. Thank you for speaking to us. You did mention that you created a 10-year plan, not a 5-year plan. And considering it was 1 year after that you succeeded all your goals, how did you assess the industry? What did you take into consideration, really, to create that realistic timeline?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I think I probably could have. It's an interesting question, because like I wanted to just be conservative, so I said 10 years. I think if I had said 5 years, then you never know. I could have gotten it done in 6 years or 7 years, right? Because you set the goal, and if you set the goal, so I might have undercut myself, and in the process, like, you know, like it happened later than it could have. But with that said, I mean, I have no regrets about it. It was just I was trying to be realistic about the shows I wanted to produce on, where I wanted my name. Like, I wanted my name to be on the Oscars. I wanted my name to be on all these big shows. And to me, I was just trying to be humble about it and not say, yeah, I'm going to get in and be producing at 5 years in, because there's a process. There definitely is a process. And you know, to me, like, it was grad school. Like, me going into, because like, as I mentioned, I only went to Mount Sac and did about 2 years on that certificate, and then I got into the industry. So to me, that was going into like college/grad school and learning on site and getting the skills. So to me, I was still learning those first 5 years after. And then the next 5 years was like me harnessing that and really being confident with myself to a point where, you know, I was getting closer to that goal. So it's interesting. I think, you know, I was just trying to be conservative, I guess, in the end, because I just don't want to. I think being cocky is not a good thing in the industry. It rubs people the wrong way. You don't want to come in and like, I'm gonna dominate and this and that. And there are people like that have succeeded, directors, people like that, and actors and stuff. And I'm not saying that being cocky isn't going to get you what you want, but I don't want that to be the stigma that comes along with working with me. You know, I want people to know that when you work with me, it's a good positive attitude, and it's going to be easy, and you're not going to get yelled at and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I think I gave it a conservative amount of time just so that I could learn and make sure that I truly was ready for that role. And I think it was fine. I think it worked out fine. I think I went through what's called the script department. And in my world of live variety television, the script department has 3 positions. Script coordinator, or actually script PA, so 4 positions where you're just collating paper scripts and stuff. You're making Xerox copies. You're doing very menial, low-level stuff, lifting boxes. Then you move up to script coordinator. Now you're building some lists, and you're building some like contact sheets, and you're helping distribute all the documentation that comes out of the script department. So you're also learning the crew, and you're learning who does what and why they need to get what they're going to get. So I spent a couple of years doing that. And then I moved up to script supervisor, where I'm dealing with the writer, I'm dealing with the producers, I'm dealing with talent, and I'm kind of learning how a show flows and why you lay script out a certain way. And so I did that, and then I moved up to production supervisor, where now I'm timing out the shows. I'm helping, I'm working with a producer to build the rundown, so we're timing out the shows so that we get off the air on time. I'm working with the line producer to make sure the schedule, the rehearsal schedule, all works out. So, you know, that takes a couple more years to learn too. You know, you can't like, maybe it's because I felt that I wasn't like a genius or somebody picked up things really fast. I just want to take the time to learn things so that when I get to the executive producer role that I'm in now, I feel really confident. I feel really confident. I can look at a schedule and say, oh, well, do we need that much time to rehearse that one segment, or we need more time to rehearse this one segment? Because I've been through situations where we realized that wasn't going to, you know, like be enough time, or we needed transition time to get the band off the stage and get the next act on the stage, you know, and that all comes from experience. So you need that experience to really be confident and be able to like deal with big talent, big acts, that sort of thing. So, and I'm 46 now, like, and like most people who do my job are not 46, they're a lot older. So I'm also very like, hey, I'm still doing pretty good. Like I still got a couple years before I reach that like really next level where I'm producing the big shows, the Oscars, the Grammys, that sort of stuff, which is, again, that's like my top goal. But I'm doing stuff that's like the Writers Guild Awards, which is a big, you know, union, and doing stuff like Miss USA, which is, you know, a time-honored pageant, working with Netflix, working with all the big brands. So like I'm in a good place, but I'm also patient, because one of the things you'll learn from that book I mentioned earlier, Think and Grow Rich, is a lot of people don't really hit their stride until they're a little bit older, like they're in their 40s and after. That's when they really start like hitting their stride. And so that's where to end this is really like, you're all very young and you have a long way to go. So just take your time, learn, meet people, get experiences, and figure out what your path is, kind of lay that out for yourself and be flexible with it. Know that things may change, things might happen, and you might have to adapt. That's fine, as long as you have kind of like a vivid vision of like what you're trying to do. And then at least you can maneuver around that. And so I would just say with that, like, just take your time. You're young, you have the whole world ahead of you, and don't feel like you're behind. Don't feel like you're don't ever compare yourself to somebody else. Okay, don't ever see like, hey, my classmate who was taking the same classes with me is working on a project, on a film, on a TV show, and I'm not. Like, don't think that way. Your time will come. You just have to be patient and do the things I mentioned, and it'll be there for you. So just be patient. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate it. And I'm going to hang around. If any of you are still hanging around here, I'm happy to meet and greet with everybody.
Is this on? Thank you for attending, everyone. Another round of applause for Augie for coming, taking the time out. Like he said, if you want to do like a quick little meet and greet and just be mindful of Augie's time, you're more than welcome to. Miss Maggie Mo brought some conchas on the side if you would like some. And thank you for the rest of your day.